have a special guest for you today, Kendra Rozboril from our office. Hi, Kendra.
Hi.
Kendra currently serves as the head of legal technical for our office. We'll get into a lot of what that is today. And also I want to talk to her about her road with our office because she's been with me quite a while. So there'll be some interesting conversation around that for sure.
Yes.
A couple of quick reminders. The governor still has us all locked up at home, so 50% off all estate planning services. Again, continue to reach out to your frontline responders. Free powers of attorney. So, take advantage of that while we're, so grateful for everyone out there who's still, helping out and having to go to work and doing all those things. So please, share this with whoever could benefit. Last ask on that is if you like our content, like our page. You'll get notifications about content that we put out, upcoming guests that we're going to have and topics we're going to talk about.
And if there's anything that you would like us to talk about or anyone who you'd like us to have on. On Tuesday we had Joe Angel, who's a CPA. There was a lot of good tax information there. If there's some topic you want us to cover or some type of professional you'd like us to have on, just shoot us a message, send us an email, something, let us know so that we can make sure it's stuff that you want to be hearing.
Yeah, great. Pat. This coming Tuesday, we have Brandon Mulrennan coming on. So he's going to talk to us all about the real estate market. What's going to be interesting to ask him a bunch of questions on is like, I know houses are being sold. How is that all happening? So I can't wait to hear from him on that. But we don't waste too much of your time today. Let's get into it. Kendra, why don't you tell us a little bit about your position with the firm now, and then we'll get into where it all started.
Okay, so at this moment, Mike already mentioned that I'm the head of legal technical at our office. What that really entails is making sure all the attorneys have a resource that's readily available within the office to ask questions to regarding the legalities of things, wording on some of our trusts to make sure that we're catering to our clients or our family's wishes. And also for our attorney ethics, as attorneys, we do have ethics that are rules for us that we have to abide by. So all the attorneys and even our employees can come to me and ask me questions.
Yeah, one interesting point on that is I don't think many people are aware just of how well and the things we have to do to protect client information. Everything from, think about this, we're all working from home right now. We have client information maybe at home. We have to put that all away under lock and key every night, passwords on computers. It's very tricky to make sure that everything is always kept confidential. We can't, it's just part of the attorney-client privilege and everything that goes along with that.
Right.
So anyways, back to what Kendra was saying about what she does. What she does in my world is when we get something crazy complicated, a family that we're working with wants some really intense creative distributions, and I love that. I'm calling Kendra. I'm saying, Kendra, how are we going to how do we massage this language to make sure that it does exactly what we need it to do? And so Kendra is definitely an awesome resource for all of us. And then also for me, and I know Pat too, as we like to kind of with that entrepreneurial mindset, have all these great, crazy, creative ideas. Kendra's the one pushing the brakes all the time. Guys, if we do that, we need to do A, B, and C before we do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, we do. All right, fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I love you, Kendra.
Yeah, and there is an awful lot of, do we have to? And the answer is yes. Yes, you have to.
Yeah.
Because it's stuff that if you're not a lawyer, you don't think about, or it's stuff that if you are a lawyer, sometimes you would rather not think about. For example, something that happened to me earlier this week is I was talking to someone and he goes, oh my God, you need to, my grandfather has X, Y, and Z issues. I don't think he's got anything in place. You need to talk to him. Here's his information. We can't do that. I can't call him. So I have to tell him, it's like, okay, you want me to talk to your grandfather? Here's my information. You can give it to him, but he has to be the one to call. It's all kinds of things that you don't, that's we all know that one. We all know that we can't do that. But if you're not a lawyer, you might not know, and there are other kind of the way things get tied up. And Kendra has pretty much all the answers there.
I wouldn't say all the answers, but a good majority of them.
She knows it all. And then also with the legal technical, you also head up all of our Medicaid planning.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So
yeah. I do Medicaid planning. I do most of the probate within the office, meaning, I'm going to court to get guardianship, conservatorship for families, or helping with a decedent estate, meaning someone's passed away and their assets need to go through probate, which I know you guys have covered before on this show. So I'm really kind of the person in the court system if needed.
Awesome. So Kendra, let's take it back a little bit. And so let's talk about when you first started with our office and what did that look like?
So I first started, I think my interview was, it was the end of 2015. I was still in law school. I was a baby. And I did the interview. You guys offered me my externship pretty readily. Started beginning of 2016. A few months into it, it just became apparent that, we were growing. We were starting to do kind of like, what we do is now as a workshop. We were getting more people in, and, I was offered a position in March of 2016, and I've been with the firm ever since.
Yeah. Kendra's role has definitely changed from internship or externship to a law clerk because you hadn't passed the bar yet, and then transitioning to an attorney where, originally the office was handling a lot more contested probate cases. So Kendra was heading up a lot of those contested probate cases. And then as we continued to grow, as the need for estate planning services and asset protection grew, we definitely narrowed the scope of focus that we did. And Kendra really fell into a great spot, at least I think so, being in charge of legal technical.
Yeah. No, definitely. It definitely worked out. It worked out, I think, in my benefit, hopefully in the firm's benefit as well.
Hey, Amanda, how are you? Check it in. All right, so let's talk today then, since we have Kendra's ear that we can bend for a little bit and ask her some really tricky, difficult questions. Let's talk about, because you do so much of the Medicaid and VA planning at our office, let's talk a lot about the overall idea of how is long-term care paid for? And Pat, I know you're going to chip in a lot here on that too. Yeah. But, let's essentially go through if someone hasn't planned for long-term care, they either haven't earmarked money to private pay for it, they don't have a long-term care insurance policy, or maybe they do have a long-term care insurance policy, but the day rate, the amount of money that they will get from their long-term care policy won't cover the full care. What are people's options essentially?
Okay.
Maybe you could jump in, or whoever. I'm good.
Yeah. So I would just ask that if anything sounds a little too technical, Mike, stop me and kind of explain, because sometimes I get into that mindset.
Yeah.
So there's really 3 ways to pay for long-term care. You're looking at, like Mike mentioned, you may have long-term care insurance, which we do see those policies every once in a while, but not everyone has it. So that is one way to pay for it. Another way is private pay. You pay out of pocket completely. You have no assistance in making those payments. And then the third option.
Let's stop there real quick, because let's maybe talk about how much long-term care costs. Because the idea of private pay is use the money that you've saved up to pay for your care as you need it. And in the state of Michigan, we're ranging anywhere between, I believe the state average right now is about $8,600, $8,700, and it can easily exceed $15,000 per month, depending on the amount of care an individual needs. Is that right? Are we about right on those numbers?
Yeah, you are right. So if you break that down into a day rate, you're looking at best, anywhere between $250 to upwards of $300 a day. And that's where you kind of get those numbers, because it is on a day rate, and it is based on the care you need. It's also based on where you're at, where you're living. Oakland County does tend to be a little bit more expensive than, say, a county up in the UP, just because of the area.
Right. And with that, I was meeting with a family earlier this week who thought you know, they had long-term care insurance. They were like, great, we have that piece of the puzzle all taken care of. When we got into the policy and we were looking at it, they were only covered for $75 a day. So don't get me wrong, that's better than nothing, but it's only a piece of the puzzle, right? Or a piece of the pie. There's still quite a bit. If someone has true long-term care needs, it's going to well exceed $75 a day.
Exactly.
Pat, anything on that? You're quiet today.
I've got some thoughts. I'm trying not to step on toes. Yeah, that was a choice, Mike. But now that you mention it, yeah. So there is kind of that whole spectrum there on the absolute cheapest side of things, where you're still at home, you're still basically independent, but someone is coming in to help out. You're already looking at about $2,000 to $3,000 a month for that care. As you get into assisted living, you're more in the $4,000 to $8,000, kind of depending. And then with skilled care, you know, $8,500 up till, you know, $12,000 or $15,000, depending on specific needs, depending on memory issues, all those other factors that come into play. And a lot of people have planned for retirement, or at least that's what they think they did. But they didn't plan for, what if I have to write an extra check every single month for somewhere between $3,000 and $12,000? Mm-hmm. Where is that money going to come from? How long could you realistically keep doing that? For the vast majority of people, the answer is not very long at all. So Kendra had touched on kind of two ways that people pay for care. They either dig into their own money, meaning they go their checking account, they cash in life insurance policies if they've got it, they wind up spending down IRAs and 401ks. I mean, that's what happens with an awful lot of folks. But about 2/3 of long-term care, of skilled care, is paid for by Medicaid. Far and away, the biggest provider of long-term care in Michigan and in the United States is Medicaid. It's more than twice the size of private pay and long-term care insurance combined. And so just to talk on that a little bit, Kendra, I would turn that back to you, but it is often surprising to people when they hear that Medicaid is how people pay for long-term care. There's this idea of Medicaid as that is a poor person health insurance is something that I've heard it called before. It's like, that only happens if you don't have any money. And there's a couple factors there. One is, when you are younger, it may well be that you have low income, you have need, and Medicaid can act as a health insurance in that capacity. But it's very, very different when you're talking long-term care Medicaid, which is either community-based, nursing home-based. There are different ways that goes. But I'll just bounce back to you on that one, Kendra, to say, you know, what does that look like for people who maybe they are concerned about going to care, or maybe they have, you know, a loved one who's already there or who's about to go there? What does that look like for people?
So it looks like a lot of different things. When you're talking about using Medicaid to pay for your care, it could be any number of instances. You know, people just like you mentioned, think that it's only if you don't have any money, where that could be the case. That is not always necessarily the case. You know, something that we try to assist, you know, with is maybe one spouse is in the nursing home and the other is not. So you have, you know, a community spouse who still needs assistance, who still needs the income. Community spouse is someone who doesn't need nursing home care. So they're still living at home. They're still able to either care for themselves or only need minimal assistance. They don't need skilled level of nursing care.
Okay.
So that could be the case. You know, you could have significant assets, but as the numbers we've already, you know, kind of gone over, how much care costs, you know, $100,000 can go within a year, you know. So it's something that it can be problematic even from the beginning, even if you do have money and have planned a little bit.
You know, hey, Kendra, just to that point, and maybe Pat, you can touch on this a little bit. I get often asked this question. I only have 150,000 in assets. Is it worth planning? And to me, and maybe you feel the same way. I mean, that's where like planning can be even more important, right? Hanging on to as much of that as you can, right? Talk a little bit let's talk about the qualifications and how that all works.
Okay. So there are qualifications, and some are the same for both single people and married couples, but there are some that are different. The base minimum for the person who is in nursing home care, in order to qualify for Medicaid, to be eligible, you have $2,000 in assets, and that thing's kind of split off from there. So you have kind of 3 tests, if you will, if you want to think of it that way, to get someone eligible. You have the medical test, which you qualify for skilled care, and that's not something we really can plan for. That's just you need skilled care. And then you have your income test and your asset test. Our office assists most with the asset test, only because that is something that we can control and something that we can do with here in Michigan. With income here in Michigan, when it comes to Medicaid, for Medicaid nursing home care, your income just can't be more than your nursing home bill. That's it.
So, and I just want to loop back to that one because it's very, very different. Long-term care, skilled care Medicaid versus low-income Medicaid.
Right.
Because a lot of people will think I have too much income from Social Security, from pension, from whatever to qualify for Medicaid. And that may be the case if you're talking a 42-year-old person who's working, their income might be too high. There is virtually no cap for the income for somebody who's in skilled care, because as you say, it would have to be more than their monthly bill. And if their monthly bill is $9,000 a month, I'm not seeing a whole lot of people with $9,000+ a month of Social Security and pension.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of people qualify for the income test. But the thing is, with that being said, if your bill is $9,000 and you have $9,000 and a penny in income, you're not going to get qualified for Medicaid. Your income covers it. So those are kind of the 2 things. I think assets are kind of more of what we deal with, like I mentioned, because it's something we can plan for and something we can control. Mike mentioned, the $150,000 in assets and planning for that. And it is more imperative because, as I stated before, the person who is in nursing home care can only have $2,000 to their name in order to be qualified. When you're dealing with the spouse that's in the home still, who's in the community and still needs assets, the numbers get a little bit different. You can protect more without necessarily involving an attorney, but you still have some things that have to be spent down to. So you have to come down to a certain level.
And that's on kind of a case-by-case basis, right? Where that determination is made. There's a range, but I think it behooves people a lot to talk to an attorney here, if they think that's a possibility for the future, or if it's something they're involved with now, because there are times where I know you, me, Mike as well, have met with someone and said, you know what, based on where your assets are, based on where your income is, there's not really a lot of work for us to do here. Here are the next steps that you can take, and you can have someone do that. But on the flip side is not asking those questions. Somebody who just, well, I went on the Medicaid website and I Googled some things and this is what it looks like. And so that's what I did. When my spouse or when my parent went into care 3 years ago, and now that every dollar is spent, now that they're totally broke, I figured I'd talk to an attorney and see what we should do now.
Right. I would agree with you on that, Pat. So often we find that families come to us too late, or they've done some things because they've Googled things and they're like, they walk in, they're like, yep, we gave away all of mom's, dad's money and we distributed it to the kids. We used it on our mortgages. We're all set. Mom has nothing. We're ready for Medicaid. And it's like, yeah.
Not only we are all laughing because not only would that disqualify mom for Medicaid, it would penalize her for months or years,
Yeah.
and it's a nightmare scenario. But people are not, they're not bad actors. They're not trying to do something wrong. They're trying to do what they think is in their loved one's best interest. That's part of why we go kind of, not to toot our own horn, but a little above and beyond, I think, in terms of having that sort of open door policy. If people are in a position where they think that Medicaid or where they think long-term care might be an issue, maybe it's an Alzheimer's diagnosis, or maybe you're just, you just turned 75 and you're seeing, kind of what is going on with some folks around you. You can always talk to us, either now through Zoom meetings or virtually, or once we open the doors again, physical doors again, sit down and talk it through. Because once we've done that, then you can say, okay, here's where things are now. Here's what's potentially at risk. Here are your different strategies and options. And then you can make a decision from that, as opposed to, well, it said it in this article. It's like, yeah, but that article was about Ohio law in 2018, which is completely different than Michigan law in 2020.
Yeah,
so just to say, it changes so frequently. Yeah.
And Pat, some of the things that we're talking about has to do with, there's some exempt assets that are non-countable that can't be touched. But my point to doing some bad planning before seeing an attorney, that's I think where we get into situations where people feel like the state can take stuff. They can take your house. Medicaid can take your house. And can Medicaid take your house?
Sort of. So one of the things that I always, one of the other things that we joke about is a lot of our answers, well, it depends. And it kind of does. So in the moment when you are in nursing home, whether you're in nursing home or you have a spouse that's still living in the house, you can keep your home. Medicaid's not going to take it from you as long as it's, in your name and it's still with you. After you pass away and Medicaid has paid some money, there are some instances where they could potentially try to recover some of the money they've paid through the house. So that's where it could potentially be that Medicaid is taking the house. They're not really taking it. They're just trying to recoup some of the money that they've paid over time.
Or they do it by taking your house.
And maybe there was bad planning done, and now we can't reverse some things. And like the kids who paid on their mortgages, now we're in a difficult spot. We can't get the money back to cure the gift. But at the same time, the only thing left is mom's house, and we have to sell it to get through the penalty period. So now all of a sudden there's this idea that Medicaid or the state can take your stuff.
So just to weigh in on that a little bit, there seem to be the two things I hear most common from people is the state is going to take my house, or the state can't take my house, it's protected. Like the two most common things are completely the opposite, and neither one is really accurate. Because during your lifetime, when you need the care, they are not reaching out and taking the house. They're not reaching out and taking the money. What they do is they deny you coverage, where they say, oh, you've got too much stuff, sell the stuff, pay the money for the nursing home. So they're not taking it, but they are effectively forcing you to spend down. The flip side, though, is what you were talking about, Kendra, with estate recovery, where they actually do reach out and take it. If you have assets that go through probate after your passing, and Medicaid has paid for any of your care, so let's say that you were in the nursing home for 1 year, and your only asset was your home, and when you pass away, you wrote it clearly in your will, this home goes to my daughter. Well, what'll happen is when that will and that house go to probate, an attorney from the state will show up and say, excuse me real quick, we paid for a year's worth of their care. That costs $100,000. So we are going to take $100,000 of value from that home. And if the value is more than the home, that means they take the whole thing. And if the value is less, you, the beneficiary, gets what's left. And that's assuming that you were able to hold on to the house, because with a married couple, it works out a lot better, meaning you've got one person, the institutional spouse who's in care, But then the community spouse is at home, they've got assets, they've got resources, and they can be at home to keep the house. If you have a single person now, and that person has a house, and now that person goes to the nursing home, I hear it, well, it used to be every day, now it's about every week. Well, they won't take the house. How is that house getting paid for? If they're in the nursing home, who's paying the taxes, who's paying the utilities, who's doing the upkeep, who's doing all of those things? And before you go down the path of, oh, I'll just rent it to a grandkid, you can't do it. It's not a rental. You know, if you rent it out, now you have an income producing property as opposed to your exempt homestead. So it's just that there's an awful lot of things that go into play there where someone thinks the house is protected, and then it really isn't, because unless somebody is willing, out of the goodness of their heart, to pay all the taxes and upkeep and everything on it. Oh, and by the way, you lost your primary residence exemption, principal residence exemption, because that's not your principal residence anymore. The nursing home is. It has a way of spiraling out of control. And these are just the things that people, they don't think about. If it's not your full-time job, why would you know any of this stuff?
This stuff's complicated.
It certainly can be.
Just Google and learn all of this.
Oh yeah,
You could read them, like you could just read the whole thing.
right. So as Mike was saying, you could just read the BEM. The BEM is the Michigan Medicaid rules, the Bridges Eligibility Manual. And Kendra, I assume you being an expert in this area, obviously have a nice leather-bound copy of the Bridges Manual in your home, right?
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing and horrible at the same time. So no, they don't print them anymore. From what Pat has told me, from what he knows from other people, as they used to. I've never had one. They just don't, because they update them at least on a quarterly basis. As you can imagine too, with COVID-19 right now, they're updating them. I get policy updates probably at least every other day. They're trying to make things easier. Yeah, but right. But that being said, the manual itself, you have over 100 rules, easy. Some of them can be 70 pages long. There's a lot of documentation there, a lot of exceptions, a lot of rules that you have to follow.
Yeah, I think that's important to say that what the Bridges Manual considers one rule, when you say there's like 100 rules, this is one rule. It has 96 subparts to it.
Yes.
Each one of which is its own nuanced little rule.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, as I know, we could probably sit here and talk about this for like ever. Let's touch on one thing, because I know this is an important thing that people want to know about. Like, when is the right time to plan? Because I've heard there's like something called a look back. Like I Googled that one time and it came up. So there's that. And then what if like you need care tomorrow? Like, what does this all look like? Is it ever too late? Give me the rundown on that.
Yeah. Funny you should say that. I think we have a video on our website actually of me saying it's never too late. And that's what I would say. It just, because I say it depends a lot, is it depends on every person's circumstance when they come to us. Of course, we do like to pre-plan. That's why, we do asset protection and we do have those conversations with all the families we interact with. But it doesn't necessarily mean that if you need nursing home care today, there's not something we still can do. Even if that's just doing the Medicaid application for you because the person already qualifies, and dealing with you in the nursing home and Medicaid and kind of taking some things off the plate for you. We try to take a customized approach to everything. So we try to make sure that your particular circumstance is all the needs are addressed. So it just depends on what you're dealing with in that moment, but it's never too late.
I think that some of the things that are misunderstood in estate planning, and it's definitely a shame if it's not discussed, is the biggest threats these days to someone's estate while they're living is some type of medical condition or an unexpected, need for care that's going to cost as much as we've been talking about. And then also, divorce or those kinds of things that could really attack the amount of assets and wealth that someone has saved up over their lifetime. So I think asset protection is something that should at least be discussed. I mean, probate avoidance for sure is the first thing probably most people think about when they think about estate planning. But really, I mean, planning for you first. And I think we all do a really good job of that, and just making that our message is like, you've worked your entire life for what you have. And so we need to make sure that that is protected, and whatever's left over at the end, great. You know, we can make sure it avoids probate. You pay as little tax on the distribution. It's as easy as possible. I mean, those things are pretty straightforward, but just at least knowing your options when it comes to how can I protect what I've built. I think it's great to have those conversations.
For sure. A lot of people come in and their first concern is an estate tax concern. And so your first question is, do you have more than $11.5 million? Because if you have less than $11.5 million, you don't owe a dime of federal estate tax. And Michigan has no state estate tax. That is something that's changed tremendously over the last 20 years. You go back to the 90s or the early 2000s, well, estate tax, that was a major concern. Cost of long-term care, not so much. But people are living quite a bit longer. They're a lot healthier. And it's, you know, hey, if you have this level of assistance, if you take this medication, you do these things, you know, you can keep living. You can be with us for quite a bit longer, but there's a cost that goes along with that. And so how do we protect against that? Far more so than as I say, the estate tax or some of these kind of older concerns that are not really what's impacting families today.
100%.
Yeah.
Well,
All right.
are we wrapping today?
I think so. I think half an hour is plenty of time for people to have to listen to us.
Yeah, great. Kendra, thank you so much for being a part of this today. Anyone can reach out to Kendra directly or book appointments with her.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't mind that.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks everyone again for tuning in. Again, next Tuesday, we're having Brandon Mulrennan on talking real estate. Also, a reminder on 50% off all estate planning services as the governor continues to, there you go. There's your address. Directly email her. You got it. There you go. Awesome. 50% off, free powers of attorney to all frontline responders. So everyone have a great weekend. We will catch you next Tuesday at noon.
All right. Take care.
Bye.